post is a violation of community guidelines of LinkedIn. It removed it, and it's becoming more ugly by the day.
So what's really happening is, I think AI bots across the world are now getting trained to be a little more sensitive. We've seen the controversy that broke out in India over Gemini's expression on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We've seen many such instances across the world where a prompt given by somebody of an Indian origin or otherwise generating results which may or may not be accurate, and because of this inaccuracy, the whole world going hammer and tongs on AI bots. What happened in this time, I think the rewrite with AI feature on LinkedIn posts is a new addition. It's not something which has been around for very long, and anytime you write a post and then you say rewrite with AI, it often changes words and terms which may not be as accurate as they are intended to be by the original writer of the post. I think a similar thing went down with Bhavish Agarwal. I think for the LinkedIn bot, it was difficult to ascertain whether Bhavish Agarwal is a male or a female, he or she. In fact, the trend on LinkedIn over the last many years now has been that along with your name, you write him, himself, her, herself in brackets. So primarily, it's a global platform. So when you want to be identified, if you want to be identified with a particular gender, many influencers and regular people out there on LinkedIn start using brackets which denote their gender. Maybe absent in the case of Bhavish Agarwal, and perhaps the AI bot wanting to play it safe, instead of addressing Bhavish Agarwal as he, address Bhavish Agarwal as they. So number one, it's a plural. And number two, it is also what Bhavish Agarwal is now referring to is a pronoun illness. And that pronoun illness term used by Bhavish Agarwal inadvertently perhaps led to the post being taken down. Was it inadvertently or not? We don't know really. There isn't really a statement from LinkedIn on why that post was taken down, except for the fact that it flouted community guidelines. So any flouting or violation of community guidelines, the automated process is to take down the post. So, that taking down of the post led to Bhavish Agarwal writing a second post. And pretty sure that even that second post would eventually be taken down. Now, all of this has led to two aspects. Number one, there's a very nationalistic card that Bhavish Agarwal has begun to play over the weekend.
Knowingly, deliberately using pronoun as perhaps one of the talking points for him to push his own platform, Krutrim.
Yeah, so so that is the second, that is the assumption really, right? So the fact is that over the weekend, Bhavish Agarwal has taken a very nationalistic stand, not unlike we've seen many other startup founders in recent history take, right? And I mean, it started, I mean, there are examples galore, but started all the way back with Bajaj Auto saying Hamara Bajaj and the national pride that came with it. Cut to many decades later, demonetization and Paytm's front page ad associating with an India cause. Cut to late last year, the Maldives controversy, and you had Ease My Trip, Nishant Pitti coming out with banning flights to Maldives. So, I think anytime there's a nationalistic card to be played, Indian startups are catching up and Indian entrepreneurs are catching up to it fairly fast. So in this case, I think the nationalistic card really that Bhavish Agarwal took out of his hat was that, hey, we've got an Indian AI service provider. We don't need services of global bullies like Microsoft. So for all those who are out there on the Microsoft Azure platform, which is the cloud servicing platform, and using AI as a built-in feature with that cloud, there is an alternative available. And the statement that Bhavish Agarwal makes is that within 5 days, within a week, this week start rises there, it is owned by Bhavish Agarwal. So at one level, saying that almost 100 crore rupees worth of business that Microsoft does in India is now going to move away from Microsoft to Krutrim, which is Bhavish Agarwal's own AI platform. In a way, also sending out another message that there is an alternative available in Krutrim. For all other businesses out there using Microsoft Azure, explore Krutrim as an alternative. So how much of that is actually, a made-up controversy because of the pronoun illness that Bhavish Agarwal said, and how much of it is actually using that opportunity to move business to Krutrim is yet to be seen.
Calling it an illness in itself is associating it with some sort of stereotype. For people out there, a minority section of people who've been marginalized for far too long because they identify either as non-binary or as trans, they are not ill. I mean, essentially, this very argument to try and get more people to download Krutrim, to go to Krutrim, using a pronoun-based argument seems to be a little out of place, at least to me,
So
to
as
begin
I
with. I mean,
understand-
just one example to give you here, Karthik, which is what I was thinking of when I was reading all those posts out there on LinkedIn, and the comments that followed was that there could be a female Bhavish as well, just like there could be a male Shweta as well. So in India as well as abroad, a gender cannot be associated with a name. Therefore, it's very difficult to ascertain whether a Bhavish is a male or a female. So they them seem safer.
Absolutely. But that is where I think the chatbots and that is where the AI engines need to read enough. I'm sure any article written on Bhavish Agarwal after the first paragraph would refer to him as he, right? So which Bhavish Agarwal wanting to write or rewrite using AI what should lead to the correct result. So that is point number one. Point number two, I think the pronoun illness and illness here that Bhavish Agarwal was talking about is not an illness of the pronoun, but an illness of the bots themselves to play safe when in doubt by using a pronoun rather than attributing a he or a she. So I think the illness that he was referring to was not they being an illness, but this pronoun being used in place of a he or a she, a very clear-cut gender denomination being an illness associated with the bots.
Right.
So I think that is how Bhavish Agarwal perhaps intended to use pronoun illness rather than it being an illness for those who refer to themselves as an illness to the bots, which and comments can go haywire.
We don't know what he intended.
My assumption is that because of the inaccuracy in the message that prompts after you give a certain direction to the bot, it's the illness of the bot and not illness of the community that he's referring to. However, I think there are many aspects here which get one to believe on how efficient AI bots are right now. And the fact that should you actually get AI to write or rewrite stuff for you, and it gives you the option to actually correct it before you eventually post it. So the point is, why did Bhavish Agarwal not really correct the prompt, the response to the prompt that came before posting it, rather than trying to make a point that there is an illness out there?
All right, lots of talking points from that story, which continues to build up as Bhavish Agarwal now says he's going to move away from Microsoft. For LinkedIn has removed his post not once but twice now, and all of Microsoft's business coming from Ola will go to Krutrim, and guess who owns Krutrim? Well, Bhavish Agarwal himself. We're going to leave it at that. It's time for a very short break here. We'll be back with more stories on the other side. Keep watching Newsline.
A defiant performance by Ten Hag's men. Now standing at 7 feet 4 inches, Satnam Singh is making his way into professional wrestling.
We are getting more good news for India.
Can the Trinamool candidate from Baharampur hit the ball out of the park?
50-60 दिन बहुत ज़्यादा बोल रहा हूँ, उससे पहले ही काम दिखने स्टार्ट हो जाएंगे.
Pitted opposite Pathan in Team BJP is Dr. Nirmal Kumar Saha.
The fight is not Adit Chaudhary and Nirmal Saha. The fight between...
Can one of the first-time politicians end his winning streak?
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Welcome back. You're watching Business Plus. Months before some spice blends of MDH and Everest were banned by Hong Kong and Singapore, MDH was under scanner in the US. Now, MDH saw an average of 14.5% of its US shipments rejected due to the presence of a bacteria, according to Reuters' analysis of the US regulatory data. Now, according to data compiled by Reuters from the US Food and Drug Administration, MDH products were rejected for sale in the US due to presence of Salmonella, a bacteria that causes gastrointestinal illnesses. Now, last month, Hong Kong and Singapore, remember, banned some spice products from both MDH and Everest after they said that they found high levels of cancer-causing pesticides in them. Ethylene oxide is unfit for human consumption. It was found in certain batches of both MDH as well as MDH and Everest spices mix, and its long exposure can cause cancer. Both MDH and Everest have said that their products are safe to use. MDH, in fact, also clarified that it did not use ethylene oxide during storing, processing or packaging of spices. But moving on now to India's overall export story. India's overall exports may grow by 10 to 15% in financial year 25. Industry body projects goods and services exports will touch about $900 billion. Now, Indian exporters anticipate a 10 to 15% increase in goods exports despite challenges in global markets. Total exports are projected to touch $900 billion this year. Last year, it was $780 billion. Now, while goods export are expected to increase about $500 to $510 billion. Services exports may be a little sluggish at $390 to $400 billion. Karthik continues to be with me. Karthik, what's really happening here? It does look like, being from an exports or services driven economy, goods will continue to dominate majority of exports out of India.
In fact, that has been the case even last year, Shweta, and for many years preceding that as well. So while services is India's speciality and India's calling card, and there is fewer number of countries out there that compete with India when it comes to services exports, especially IT services, we have enough and more competition on goods exports. So this number of 900 should have ideally been reached last year had global events not turned out the way they did turn out. And I think even this year, to grow at 10 to 15%, reaching that $900 billion depends on a lot of domestic factors as well as global factors. For one, we know that PMI has come in strong month after month, which means that overall the industrial activity, both in manufacturing and in services, has been fairly robust, which means you're on the right track. We are on the right track, but is there going to be enough demand that comes for India's services as well as goods exports in this year is something which is yet to be seen. Remember, we are still not out of the woods when it comes, or rather out of the seas when it comes to the crisis in the Middle East. So Red Sea trade routes continue to be a challenge for India. Freight costs continue to be up, right? Gold already is at an all-time high, which means that governments and citizens across the world are shoring up gold reserves because they really don't know which side the crisis is going to eventually fold or unfold. Number two, you are also looking at US data, not very confident. We were hoping for rate cuts, at least 6 rate cuts this year, tamed down to 2, at least 1 rate cut this year. Talks of that are also now gradually moving, perhaps in a neutral stand, if not a certain hike in rates before they start falling again, which means global demand of services from India is going to continue to be tepid. Now, given that IT forms a major share of India's services exports from India, that story could be the last really to pick up. So the Indian government is actually keen on other engineering services as well as healthcare, etc., to talk about the increase in exports when it comes to services. But on manufacturing, it's a different ballgame altogether. So China is recovering much faster than we had anticipated it to. And China's growth coming in at about 5.2%, beating all estimates, suggests that manufacturing activity in China for exporting to the rest of the world may actually pick up to compete with India much before India's own manufacturing story shows up. So add to that India's own domestic issues. We need a good monsoon, definitely, right? We need some sort of capex to kick in from the private sector, and that is going to be dependent on the data that comes up from elections next month. So so is there going to be continuity in policy or not is going to really pave the way for whether Indian companies are going to make those investments to manufacture more and more of what is then the second question, because PLI schemes, etc., other incentives are going to kick in after a new government takes office in the month of June this year.
All right, let's sticking to export story. Apple's iPhone exports from India has also hit a milestone. Exports of iPhones made in India nearly doubled in the month of April to $1.1 billion from $580 million a year ago, according to official data. In financial year 24, Apple's total production in India touched $14 billion. The company's exports crossed $10 billion. Both these figures are the highest ever achieved by any company in India till date for a single financial year. Now, Apple now aims to broaden its production base in India and target to make a quarter of all its iPhone in the country over the next 3 to 4 years as it builds a network of local vendors instead of sourcing inputs from Chinese suppliers. We do know, as far as iPhone exports is concerned, India is taking a stride. About 25% of all iPhones to be made in India in the next 3 to 4 years. How difficult is that number to achieve? Currently, it's about 5%.
So I think, my short answer to that, Shweta, would be it completely depends on how quickly China bounces back.
Right.
The fact that we are already making about 14% of all global iPhones here in India, and the fact that Tata Electronics is going big into, first it bought Vistron, now it is in talks to buy Pegatron's India manufacturing plants. Then the only third non-Indian player remaining that makes iPhones in India happens to be Taiwanese Foxconn. So the point is that with Foxconn and with Tata Electronics, these two factories of Vistron and Pegatron incidentally now launching a second factory which will make Tata Electronics own 3 factories, suggests that, the climb from 14% to 25%, given the fact that iPhone demand continues to be in line with what it has been and continues to grow at the same CAGR.
So iPhone made about 200 million iPhones produced overall, about 200. That number is going to go up to 300 as some are estimating.
So as long as the iPhone demand globally continues to go up, then India making a bulk of those iPhones should be a reality. But I think a lot depends on whether China is going to bounce back much quicker than anticipated and eat away part of that 25%. That is yet to be seen.
All right, well, sticking on to China, in the fiscal year 23-24, China has overtaken the US as India's largest trading partner once again. The total two-way commerce between India and China has come in at $118.4 billion as per data from economic think tank GTRI. Now, India's exports to China rose by 8.7% to $16.67 billion, while imports increased by barely 3.24% to $101.7 billion. US came in very close second, with bilateral trade between India and US coming in at $118.3 billion in 23-24. China has pipped US to become the biggest trading partner with India once again. Look at the number, very, very small difference of 0.1% there.
So actually, the headline really was last year when US had overtaken China to become India's largest trading partner at about 2 consecutive years. So at about 129, almost $130 billion, the mammoth size and the delta between US and China reaching about $30 billion or so was really the headline. This time around, what we've seen is trade with US decline, primarily on the back of India's exports, IT exports to US not growing at the same clip as one would have liked them to grow, and at the same time imports coming in from China. So that difference between what China was trading with India and what US was trading in India, working in favor of US, has now reversed, albeit just 0.1, just a decimal point difference. But the fact is that China has once again reached as India's top trading partner.
I want to just spend next 30 seconds also to talk about the imbalance in trade between India and China. Look at the volume of exports versus the volume of imports. A stark difference of at least 50%, more than 50%, come to think of it.
Yeah, so the point is, does China need anything which is specifically made in India? And the answer to that is, barring spices, for which again China happens to be the largest export hub for India, there's precious little that India makes which China does not make. So China has no reason really to import from India. But talk about the reverse flipping of that, what China makes and India needs, that laundry list gets longer and longer by the day.
All right, so India and China, they're emerging as strong partners when it comes to two-way commerce, and we keep tracking all those stories here on News 9. Time for a short break here. We'll be back with more on the other side.
वो पूछते हैं कि हम कौन है गालिब, तुम बतलाओ कि हम बतलाएं क्या।
I told him, you do what you think is best. I will not insist.
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
I try and convert almost everything in a kind of a mathematical formula.
You should always stretch more than you can reach.
Listening is very important.
Because if you don't listen, how would you know what the problem is?
Everybody who's working in and around me, their personal well-being is also a responsibility that I carry.
Great leaders have shared vision.
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Welcome back. You're watching Business Plus. OpenAI is expected to announce significant advancements to ChatGPT and GPT-4 today. Expectations are rife that Sam Altman-led OpenAI may launch a new artificial intelligence-driven search product as a competitor to Google. Now, Sam Altman has, of course, denied the reports of OpenAI planning to come up with a Google-like search engine. OpenAI CEOs say that he will come up with something that people will in fact love, and it's not going to be a search engine. So what exactly will it be, Karthik?
I don't know. I mean, I wish I was in the mind of, I could read the mind of Sam Altman and really give a concrete answer to that. But what we definitely know from what we are reading, what it is not going to be, it's not going to be a search engine,
Okay.
right? So that was, I think, Google's biggest fear, because Google search accounts for almost 80% of the entire search market, followed by Microsoft Bing. And Microsoft Bing, still, while it uses OpenAI and while it uses GPT services, AI services, has not really made much of a dent yet to Google's dominance when it comes to search. But Sam Altman has said it is not going to be a search engine. He has also said it's not going to be ChatGPT-5.
Okay.
So ChatGPT-5 was the next really big expectation, because it's been about 13-14 months since GPT-4 got launched, and no real massive upgrades which could warrant the launch of a GPT-5 as yet. But today's press conference and today's launch demo was expected to be that of GPT-5. But I think enough water has been spilled on that as well, that it is not going to be GPT-5.
So now that you've ruled out everything,
so what
remains?
Going to be? I think, from the tweets by both OpenAI and Sam Altman, it seems that there are going to be some massive upgrades to the existing ChatGPT-4. And what could these upgrades be? I think for one, it could definitely be a more error-free and a faster processing of of whatever the Gen AI engine eventually generates. I have a feeling it could also be Sora. So Sora, we have not yet seen being launched, publicly for consumption, for use by anybody outside of that very, very closely guarded short testing unit. So Sora has done the rounds, it has made headlines, and the text to video generation is something which requires enormous processing power and requires enormous amounts of footage and data and images and music to be crunched, which the public has not yet really been exposed to trying for themselves. So, maybe a public demo for how regular users of GPT-4 can end up using Sora and start creating video content using Sora could be one of the things that gets announced today. I think another demo, perhaps, if not an announcement, could be what I'm reading again from papers, is that Apple is now keen to tie up with OpenAI and integrate its AI functionality within the iPhone ecosystem. So some demo of that, some demo of what the future of handheld AI-driven technologies could look like may as well be on display, but all in the realm of speculation. I have no idea whatsoever what Sam Altman is going to throw up there tonight.
All right, so we have no idea, no clue, of course, but we're also guessing, like the rest of the media, from reports out there and from what OpenAI has revealed so far. All those details will be out at about 10 a.m. Pacific time, which is about 10 p.m. India time today. But before I close this bulletin, Canada, a popular destination among foreigners, especially Indians looking to study, live and settle abroad, has changed visa rules. Now, you may and must have the required amount of money in your bank account before you are allowed to immigrate to Canada. You need proof of funds to meet minimum requirements of the Federal Skilled Workers Program and Federal Skilled Trades Program. Now, Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, has announced new proof of funds required for express entry candidates to be effective from 28th of May 2024. IRCC has updated the table that shows how much money you need to settle in Canada. The amount is required and it's updated every year. To stay eligible, you may need to update your settlement fund numbers in your express entry profile by 27th of May. But with that, it's the end of this show. In an exclusive conversation with News9 Deputy Managing Editor Karthikeya Sharma, BJP leader and the man behind Odisha's 5T initiative, VK Pandyan, shares his thoughts on the constitution being a poll issue this Lok Sabha election. Listen in.
Do you feel that the constitution or democracy is in danger?
No, I would not say that. Not at all. Not at all. Indian constitution and Indian democracy is what should I say? It's so strong. I don't think anybody on earth or anybody in the political system will dare to touch the constitution or will have the